All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are halfway through our marathon here through break in an hour. So if you want to get up and stretch, I'm the lucky one that gets to be up here. I can see you're all jealous. Okay. No one wanted to. That's all right. You can do it in your seats too. So I'm an environmental consultant with the Minnesota Department of Health. And I work with Ann Nelson, who has described a lot of what we do on our team in the Water Policy Center. My focus is really on the petition and responding to the petition that was sent to EPA, and then EPA gave us a directive, and now we're working through addressing those items in the directive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the work that we're doing with our private well users and give you some information about our successes and lessons learned. My focus will be on the work we're doing in southeastern Minnesota, but many of the lessons that we've learned are really applicable to the rest of the state, and I'm hoping other states as well. All right, so how many people have heard this before? I've been drinking my whole life and I'm fine. Yeah, I've heard in Oregon and Massachusetts, they mention this as well, so I think we all hear this. So I cut my teeth doing private well work and public health work down in Iowa as a sanitarian, doing water testing for the private well grant program that Danielle and Eric told you about yesterday. And yeah, I heard this all the time when I was doing that. And part of that is likely because we do have a very safe drinking water supply in our country due to the Safe Drinking Water Act. And many private well users believe that they do in fact have safe drinking water, just like their friends in the city or in town. And the water in their tap, for the most part, looks and tastes pretty good. But as Ann and many of you all have mentioned, the private well users just don't have those same protections. So the goal of my work and my colleagues' work is to work towards drinking water equity, where all Minnesotans know that they are drinking safe water. I do also want to mention that in Minnesota, a drinking water protection is the responsibility of 5 separate agencies. We all have our different focus areas. At MDH, we're responsible for enforcing the well code, developing groundwater guidance, enforcing public drinking water standards, and then also we get private wells. And our focus is mostly on those things that could affect human health. Our other agencies focus on a variety of other things that have to do with drinking water. So Ann shared a little bit about our EPA directive already, but nitrate has been an issue in Minnesota and across the country for decades. I myself grew up in southeastern Minnesota, down there in Fillmore County. It's one of the green ones down there. And when my family had to drill a well in 1984, we had to drill it to over 400 feet deep in order to not have to deal with the nitrate issue. We know that those issues are not limited to Southeast. So why here, why now? Southeastern Minnesota does have a karst topography made up of limestone sinkholes, caves, and cracks in the bedrock that are features of this type of geology, which gives surface water and any contaminants in the water a direct pathway to aquifers used by private well users. We have some really phenomenal caves in southeastern Minnesota. One of them is Niagara Cave, and they have a 60-foot waterfall that's very impressive. I invite you all to come visit someday. And that cave is over 200 feet deep. During rain events, it only takes hours for the surface water from that rain event to get down into that cave. So there is that direct pathway for surface water contamination to get down into those aquifers. So there was some energy back in 2022, 23, from a couple of nonprofits, the Minnesota Well Owners Organization, and some private citizens that were concerned about nitrate in the drinking water in southeastern Minnesota. And those groups submitted a petition to EPA, asking EPA to tell us, the state, to address that issue. They were not happy with how it was being addressed. And so on November 3rd, 2023, EPA directed Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and Minnesota Department of Agriculture to develop a coordinated and comprehensive work plan to reduce nitrate contamination of drinking water in aquifers in these 8 southeastern Minnesota counties. We estimate that there are around or over 35,000 private wells in the southeastern Minnesota area, serving about 94,000 people. Wells that were constructed before the Minnesota Well Code was put into place in 1974 are particularly vulnerable to nitrate contamination. This is just based on how they were constructed. People were thinking about water quantity, and it's expensive to drill a well, so once they hit what they thought was good water, they stopped and started using that water. On the map, you can see townships, those little boxes that are red, green, and kind of pink, and the dark red, or the darkest color, are areas where greater than 10% of the wells had more than 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate in them. So we can see that this is a very high level nitrate area based on that Department of Agriculture study. So we developed a work plan that included 3 phases. The first phase is our immediate response. Right away, we knew we wanted to take the very limited amount of funding that we had and address those at most risk for nitrate contamination, babies and pregnant people. And so we allowed free water testing for households with a baby or a pregnant person. And if there was greater than 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate, they also got access to alternate water. I'm gonna skip over phase 2 for just a second. We'll end up there. Phase 3 also started around the same time, January 2024, and Department of Agriculture and Pollution Control are working on addressing nitrate going into the aquifers and trying to reduce the amount of nitrate in the aquifer by reducing what's going in. And this is being done by changes in rules, working directly with farmers to understand what best practices are realistic to implement, and working on those sorts of things. Phase 2 is our long-term public health intervention. And this is where we got additional funding to really address who the people who are drinking water in private wells and allowing them to get free water testing and free mitigation if their well tests above 10 milligrams per liter for nitrate. Ann mentioned our funding source already, the Clean Water Fund, so I won't get into that description again, but we are really, really lucky to have the Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment in Minnesota, funding the majority of the work that we're doing. The Clean Water Fund is not able to be used for mitigation. That was determined in 2024. And as a result, the Minnesota legislature approved some dollars for interventions, mainly reverse osmosis, from the general fund for us to use. These funds get us through year 1 of the 10-year goal of testing 36,000 wells in southeastern Minnesota. In year 1, we plan to test 3,600 wells and treat any wells with nitrate above 10 milligrams per liter. This is all at no cost to the well user. So in addition to our state partners, local governments and nonprofits and well contractors and just general people in the community have all helped us with this effort, and we know we could not do it without them. We want to maintain these partnerships, and in order to do that, we focus on consistent communication with our partners, and we keep lines of communication open with regular email updates and meetings to discuss current issues. Some of the meetings are once a week with the partners we work closest with. Some are a few times a year if they're more high level and they're just kind of interested in what's going on. We also approach our work with a lot of humility and flexibility and ask for feedback from our partners and use the feedback to update our approach when necessary. Again, our local partners are key to this intervention. We've leveraged an existing collaboration called Tap-In, and this is a partnership between soil and water conservation districts, local public health, and delegated well programs that began in 2021, really focusing on how to protect private well users. The testing lab in southeastern Minnesota that's housed in Olmsted County is contracted to do all the free water testing. Mitigation is also being done through that organization as well as local counties. We're working on a well inventory with our local counties and soil and water conservation districts, and we're asking everybody to help us with outreach. And so far, everybody is really excited to share this free resource. And so how this works is the private well user requests a water test kit. They go online and they fill out a form. If they don't have access to go online, they can call us or call one of the local counties and have one of us or the counties fill it out for them. Olmsted County, the lab then sends out a test kit to the user. The user gets a box that they get the test kit in the mail that they'll use it to mail it back, some test bottles, mailing label so that it's free to mail it back, and then some instructions on how to do the test kit. They then are responsible for collecting the water sample and sending it to the lab. And again, all of this is voluntary. Once the lab gets that, they test the water sample. And then depending on what the results are, there's a few different things that happen. For sure, everybody gets their results back via mail or email, whatever their chosen option is. And they also, if there's anything that tests above a certain level, then they receive mitigation information, and I think that's done through a phone call. If it's nitrate, they get information about how to request a reverse osmosis system to address the nitrate. So in order to do the test kit, or to request a test kit, people have to know about it first. So we've been doing a lot of outreach and education. Our focus so far has been on those traditional outreach approaches, newspaper and social media. These are the results of some of the social media and newspaper media campaigns in 3 different counties. And you can see here that after each county did that media release or social media campaign, the test result or the test kit request just shot right up. Unfortunately, they drop off pretty quickly too, and that's just telling us that we need to keep this at the forefront of people's minds. We also follow up on our outreach approach by asking how people heard about the free well test kit. Not surprising that newspaper and social media are at the top of the list right now. That's been our main focus. But the next most common response is really interesting. They heard about it from someone in their community. And this approach, or leveraging this approach, is really difficult. How do we get people in their community talking about this? But we're gonna try to leverage this. And Ann already mentioned the Private Well Steward Network, where we'll be working with communities on training people to know more about what's best practices for maintaining a well, where they can find resources and what they need to test for, and how they can connect with us if they need to. I also want to point out how local government and soil and water conservation districts, which are very close to local government, are really trusted in delivering messages, and people respond really well when they get information about water from those particular sources. So our outreach approach is multifaceted, and that's really intentional. We know that private well users are very diverse. They consume information and trust information from many different sources. And Ann already kind of went over a lot of these that we are leveraging, and that's consistent with what we're doing in other parts of our work on our team. And I want to underline too that we are working with not only the University of Minnesota to do some social science research, but also a marketing firm to help us with some of that social science research. They're called MP&G, and they just finished up doing local partner interviews, so like our local agencies. They also interviewed someone from, that was one of the petitioning organizations, to learn more about what their feelings are and how they think we can connect with private well users. We also had 2 focus groups of private well users that were hosted in early May. And their evaluation and recommendations will be back to us sometime in July. And then we will be using their approaches to build out our media campaign that will launch in late summer 2025. So as part of our approach, we're anticipating that we want to do direct mailings or some sort of a direct communication with well users. And we do have that well inventory, the county well index, that has a really good list of wells that were drilled after 1974. We are missing most of those wells that were drilled before 1974, of course. Those happen to be the wells that are most at risk for nitrate contamination. And so we are working with our local counties to discover and record where those wells are located. We've done some GIS work, so we have a pretty good guess where they are, but we're working with each of these counties to help us find out more specifically where those wells are located so we can get them into the well index and get those wells recorded so that we can then do more direct outreach to those well users. We've had really good success with giving them some funding. Everybody wants to sign up. Some were jumping at the opportunity and filled out a contract with us right away because this is something they had wanted to do for a really long time. They just didn't have funding for it. Whereas others, that is a pipe dream. We will never get to it. And so they're working on building out their work plans. And we're trying to be as flexible as possible. So everybody has a little bit of a different approach, whether it's a survey or maybe they're going on site or combining it with septic inspections or other types of work. So it's really interesting to see how each county is approaching it a little bit differently. All right, so we are testing, even though our focus is only on nitrate for EPA, we have fought really, really hard to test for the other 4 contaminants as well that we recommend all well users test for in Minnesota. These are kind of our top 5 in Minnesota. Initially, we were directed only to test for nitrate because that's what EPA has told us to do. However, if we were to send a result with only nitrate that showed, yep, good, safe to go, drink your water, doesn't have unsafe levels of nitrate, that well owner would likely assume, hey, they told me it's safe, I'm good to go. But there's these other contaminants that we know aren't gonna be, they might be there even if nitrate isn't there. So we fought really hard to get those included in the funding as well. And we're really glad that we did. We are seeing 11% of wells come back with nitrate over 10 milligrams per liter. And that's very consistent with what we saw in the township testing program that I showed you earlier with the red boxes. So not too much of a surprise there. But we are seeing these other contaminants coming up in wells, some that tested at unsafe levels of nitrate, but many that were safe, would have been safe otherwise. And you'll notice here, we are recommending some sort of action be taken if arsenic is present or if lead is present, which is slightly different than other recommendations from other states. This is our recommendation for private well users. Even though it's different than the public water supplies, there's different factors that go into our recommendations. And with arsenic, because it's a carcinogen, we want 0 arsenic. We don't want anybody drinking that, same with lead. And it is possible for a private well user to manage paying for a system that can really reduce those levels, even when it's already below 10 milligrams per liter. All right, so we've already been able to install 164 systems to mitigate nitrate in private wells. 12% of those homes had an infant under the age of 1 or a pregnant person in the household. So we know we're reaching those vulnerable populations and making an impact there. We also are seeing that 31% of the applicants have an income level below 300% of the poverty level. And those are people that we believe otherwise would not have been able to afford a system or would not have invested in it maybe so quickly due to the financial situation. All right, so we focused on southeastern Minnesota. We had the funding to do that. So we know that that's not the only area with nitrate. That's not the only area with the other contaminants. And so we're approaching this like a pilot. We're trying out new approaches, we're trying out new partnerships, and we're taking what we learned and carrying those approaches forward. When we finally get to expanding this program, when we have the funding to the rest of the state, we want it to be locally led. We can see that working in Iowa. We can see it working here in Minnesota. So we want to continue to do that. We want to be adaptable and change our approach when it's necessary. We also want to continue to prioritize our vulnerable populations, and we want to rely on social science and a multi-pronged approach for our advertising and outreach campaigns. We'll continue to test for the top 5. And we are nearly there, but we want to also have multiple mitigation strategies. Reverse osmosis is great, but it is not a one-size-fits-all solution for nitrate. There are often better solutions. That's the one that the legislature gave us, so we're working towards more common sense solutions where it doesn't make sense for an RO system. And ultimately, what we're doing is trying to make this as simple as possible for private well users in Minnesota. The goal of our work is to work towards drinking water equity, where all Minnesotans have safe water to drink. And I won't go too much into this slide. We'll skip over that one. Thank you all for your time today. I really appreciate you listening about our project. All right, when was the Minnesota Well Code established? Roughly how many wells were developed prior to those standards? 1974 is when the well code went into place. How many wells? That is the million-dollar question. And that's what we're trying to figure out. So I can't give more specific than that. We're really just trying to figure it out. All right, what is the estimated timeline to reduce nitrate concentrations in southeastern Minnesota? This is something that has taken decades to develop over time. We know that it's gonna take decades to reduce nitrate concentrations in aquifers. So we are looking at a very long time frame. As far as this particular project goes, to address the health considerations of nitrate, we are hoping to get to all 36,000 private well users within 10 years. Do we include any water treatment professionals among our partners? Yes. So we contract with certain water treatment companies to do the reverse osmosis installation. We're really fortunate that we're able to do that direct contract with them so that the well user doesn't have to like go through reimbursement or anything like that. They just sign up for it, and then they figure out a time to have the well the contractor come into their home, install the system, and there's no money that needs to exchange hands. It all goes between actually the county level and the contractor. How have well professionals or drillers responded to our efforts? Have there been well construction requirements or recommendations to protect against nitrate? As far as drillers, I'm not sure. That isn't a particular group that I've interacted with a whole lot yet. But as far as well construction requirements or recommendations, that's all in the well code. And it seems to be working pretty good so far, but it's always something that we are looking at to see if that needs to change. Are there specific geologies in Minnesota that are associated with elevated lead levels? As far as I know, no. The lead that we are seeing is coming from pipes and within the water systems. That is something that we were kind of surprised to see. I think it was like 41 or 43% of the lead or of the water tests came back with detected levels of lead. And so that's something that we think it's coming from the pipes and the inside of the well system, but we want to look into that a little bit more. What would you recommend instead of RO that will also reduce both nitrate and pesticides that are in the water but not tested for? The two options that we are exploring right now are well reconstruction. So like if it is obvious that there is some sort of pathway for stuff to get into the well that can't be addressed easily, we want to allow for funding to do a reconstruction. Also, if the well is real shallow or otherwise has some sort of is compromised, we are looking into ways to help with drilling a new well also. I'm also open to other ideas. One of the things that we are, that is a challenge for us is we have a pretty big Amish community and they don't use electricity. So how do we get water pressure enough to go through an RO system? So if anybody has experience or ideas on that, let me know. Do you determine which RO units to use, or do you give guidance to well owners or use certified specifically for nitrate or arsenic? So the contractors have to use NSF or otherwise certified systems to address the nitrate. All right, I think I covered the timeline one already. Are well owners collecting untreated or treated samples? They are collecting untreated samples. We're asking them to do before treatment so that they know the raw source that they're dealing with, and then we go on from there. There is some retesting that is able to happen through the funds as well, and so that just kind of gives us a baseline, that initial test. Are well owners able to request for other contaminants to be tested or included in their test? If so, would this be an out-of-pocket cost? At the moment, no. You saw that we had 500 well tests, and those were all done in between December and March. So that's kept our lab really busy. And so when we've asked the lab if this is something they would consider, so far they have said no. They really want to keep it simple and always do the top 5 and not stray from that. But there are other labs that could offer that service. All right, thank you, everyone.